seems to be on my mind. So it seems, at least seems right now, pretty little. Seems like practicing quite well. But something about this idea I've been just starting to sort of express around intimate practice. So I'll explain what I mean by that, and then hearing the Dharma in a very natural way. Hearing the Dharma. We really can hear the Dharma. We want something really flashy. Our minds want something flashy. Or something clear. But clarity, Dharma clarity, meditative clarity, insight, liberation, it's so quiet. It's from a different place. Like today, this morning, I mentioned the heart crossing this bridge, the mind, or this divide. The heart crosses it. We can listen with the heart. Listen with the heart. And we actually often know much more than we may think. Or even feel. So we want to go about it, in a sense, go about the learning, go about the practice that way. Learn to get familiar with this different way of knowing. It's just awareness, but this different way of knowing. It's really a Dharma knowing. When I talked this morning about we don't do it, well then what do I do? What do I do? Where am I going? What do I do? How do I do it? Where do I go? How do I do it? What do I do? This will keep going on. This is the limits of our mind. I don't know how to do it. I think I know how to do it. I know what it is. I don't know what it is. What is it? Oh, it's like this. It's kind of like that with the mind. Oh, I got it. Oh, yeah, I got it. I got it. I have it. We got it. We got it here. That's the mind. And it's fine, it just does that. Dharma, awareness, we bring awareness to that. We bring awareness, this is intimate practice, we bring awareness right in the middle of all that. We listen to all that and let go of all that. This Dharma as opposed to I, me, mine, and the mind. Dharma is nature. Dharma is, insight is seeing just nature. And gives it away, just like nature, just like water, just like space. Just like life just does life. Life just does life. Everything's included, including your thoughts, and we can really find that place that's beyond our mind, our ego, thinking. But it's intimate practice. It's not, we don't go to a high mountain or a small corner of We don't go where the mind imagines we go. Our imagination of what that might be. Intimate practice is always here and now. And our mind can't conceive of that. It cannot conceive of that. And it will continue to not quite be able to conceive of that. That will continue, I would say, in the mind of a Buddha. That continues. I would say. That continues. So how do we practice? It has to come from this, come from the heart, you could say, from awareness. From this different way of illuminating. Enlightenment is illumination. I like illumination these days. Today, I thought, I like illumination, because that's what it's like. It's illuminating. Everything that is with wisdom, everything that is illuminated. It's like a light. It's illuminating, and illuminated by the stuff that is coming up is not any different. It's the same stuff, but it's illuminated from a different source than itself. And that illumination, wisdom, it's understood. It's understood in a certain way from the heart. This is not this central teaching. This is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. But we're not not thinking about that. We can think about that if we want. But that's kind of maybe a description of what that heart or that illumination, that listening, understands. It understands it's just nature. It understands it's just this, just that. It's quiet, a quiet understanding, but a very deep and transformative. It's really never something to reach for. It's really just an art or a practice, or really just a way, learning to. I really think of it as like learning to walk. Once you know how to walk, it's just part of you. And don't take that metaphor too far. It's like breathing. It's actually even closer than breathing, because it's not a changing condition. So it's a different kind of knowing, or a different kind of activity, a different kind of skill, or a different kind of process to walking or breathing. But it's in the same way that it's part of you. Maybe I'll talk less now about, okay, how do you get that? Maybe that's not the best way to think about it, I wonder, just now. It's kind of maybe one of the first times I've thought that thought, but maybe that's not so useful, because as soon as you think that way, you're operating from that maybe solidifying that sense of the mind and I and time and doing. Okay, I'm going to do this. 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 Okay. In breath. Kind of feel it. Out breath. Kind of feel it, but not, could be feeling it more. That's okay. I don't want to make fun of that, but it's just, it is kind of not how we need to, the shift we need to make is to illuminate all that. Illuminate all that immediately and actually continuously when I really learn this. But that's why it may actually be, I used to think Zen teachings, they aren't so effective. That's what I used to think. They aren't so effective. They should really teach Vipassana at these Zen centers. Give people something to hold on to. But I don't know. Now I don't know so much. It's like, it has to be immediate. It has to be immediate. Can't figure that out? Well, what you going to do? It has to be immediate. You can't figure it out. That's showing you something. You need to go about it a different way. Also, the nice thing about this practice is you can't really show it to anybody, or at least most people. Maybe, but so, you really, it kind of goes against the grain of something fancy. Our mind may make something out of that. Oh, wow, whatever. I'm illuminated. I'm an illuminated one. And, you either, if you eliminate that thought, then fine, you continue and you just see it's a nuisance. If you don't eliminate that thought, then that's another story. That's the end of the illumination. But anyway, like nature, it's just this really humble practice. It's a really humble practice. It's a low practice. It's like water that just flows to the lowest point. And it does make you maybe kind of special, maybe like a really special, but just in a different kind of way, where if it's really working in you, it would be kind of like maybe people might figure out after a while, there's something about this person. the way they responded to this, or you find in 40 years you might say, you deliver 10,000 tea cakes a day, why don't you take 3 back? And then the person comes and lives with you for 3 years and asks you about the nature of mind, and then learns the nature of mind, and then teaches other people the nature of mind eventually. But so it might not, it might. We want to feel this. We want to feel this support of this water-like awareness. Really be supported by that. And it's not about putting ourselves in any fancy position, any different place than we are, or a different person than we are. It's fine. You're allowed to make yourself a different person. That's part of our karmic activity. It's part of our life. You can make yourself a different person, or you can try. That's fine. But all that stuff about how you need to really make yourself a different person so that then you can be illuminated, that will block your practice unless you illuminate it immediately. Or unless there is illumination. So you have the thought, perhaps, how do I get this illumination? So just illuminate that. Or notice how that's illuminated. Or you could just say, receive, and if that's too esoteric, just listen to that thought. That's it. It's that simple. We just keep find that place of listening, and let's keep listening. We just learn to trust it. We really learn to trust it. In a deep way, where, how do you trust when your mind most of the time doesn't quite trust something, or is constantly conceiving and cooking up things, notions? It's interesting, the description of an arahant in the old texts. Sometimes it feels like, whoa, that's out there. I don't know how they came up with that. Interesting. But there's some that kind of really resonate. And one of them, it says, the tides of conceiving do not overwhelm them. Doesn't mean that doesn't happen. Tides of conceiving do not overwhelm them. How do you not be overwhelmed by this tides, real tides of conceiving? Like, look at the tides. Go for a walk and regard the tides this evening. Maybe it's not that strong, but they get really strong. You can't swim against them. These tides, you can't swim. You can't make yourself not be overwhelmed by these tides. You can't do that. Just like you can't swim against the tides in these waters. So how do you do it? How does it happen? Just listen. Just be. There's a story, another story from Gil's Book of Stories, Gil Fronsdale's Book of Stories, little one. He says there was once a vast ocean where no land was in sight, and everything in this world, and there were people swimming. Maybe there is this world now that we're discovering. There's so many galaxies. There is a world where people are swimming, and there's no land. They just swim and swim. someone swimming, looking for land, swimming, looking for land, swimming, looking for land. Until it occurs that they could just turn on their back and float. The waves are agreeing. So this constant illumination, constant, that's important too. Sometimes think like, oh, it'll be this great moment, this one moment, this great moment. Maybe we think that, or that's so far out there. But, what if it's not? What if it's just really just has this quality of continuousness to it, this quality of trust can really just be, again, like water, it kind of flows. It does flow. It flows with these bumps of karmic consciousness. Like you think you get it for a moment and then conditions change. How can you flow with that? Learn how to flow with that. If you thought you got it, maybe you did, but maybe you just got an appearance of it. Maybe you got it. Probably you did. But anyway, you want to find this, what you're looking for is not in conditions. Conditions can be tricky because they can be tricky. They're the tides. Sometimes they appear as great luminosity, great clarity, great wisdom, great beauty, dazzling. And sometimes they appear as truly fearsome demons. There's no like you there, like, okay, this is a demon. It's like if you get a real demon, you're just in that tide. But this way of listening that can actually just equally understand either dazzling or demonic. And it's very quiet. It doesn't change that you experience those things, except that somewhere deep inside of you, you know that you may not be able to find it right in that moment. You may not be able to hold it with the mind, but you kind of know something's not hooking here. This isn't really hooking. And the Buddha describes this shift from what he called place to ground, from ground to groundlessness, this groundless ground, this groundless ground. This is what I'm talking about. Dazzling images and humdrum images and demonic images and all these tides of conceiving, everything. There's also an image in the beautiful phrase that Mara saturates the world. It's not like we're just going to like duke it out with Mara and then, boom. It's not quite like that, unless you think of it in a different way. It's like Mara is like our tendency to not flow. We can learn to flow. In that sense, we can vanquish Mara. But Mara saturates the world. So how do you vanquish Mara while you're saturated by Mara? You actually need to understand that's the illumination. Understand Mara. Understand the limits of conditioned experience. That's why it's called the unconditioned. Unconditioned understands the limits of conditions. That's the illumination. That's the groundless ground. Learning there's a place we can rest. These are just words. There's a space we can rest in. That is not born, that does not die, that does not change. It has no form. No limit. That's where Mara can't find you. But it's not a place. It's right here. So it's intimate practice. This is intimate practice. So intimate practice, these conditions of retreat, and we learn to see everything that comes, absolutely everything that happens, day and night, with each other, in ourselves, through this body and mind, no other place. Learn to illuminate it. Learn to appreciate that illumination and trust that illumination. Remember that illumination. Receive that illumination. Practice that illumination. Transmit that illumination. Through all activities of daily life. Which means like your daily life. All the weird things you get up to. Every single weird thought, of which I would bet there's thousands every day. At least thousands. Probably just hundreds at least during breakfast. That whole thing, that whole kind of weird, uncomfortable thing is to be illuminated. So we really can do this, and I'm just wanting to speak to this thing that's difficult to speak out of and difficult to speak to, because it's not the mind. But you know it. You definitely know it. It's just so quiet. It doesn't get much airtime. It doesn't get much. It's humble, like water, like empty, like space. or like light. It's seen through the forms that happen, but it's not the forms. It's just this light seen through the forms. But that's in that way we can be kind of on this deep level. We kind of really realize this intimate practice through this illumination. We may not feel grateful, but we deeply are grateful for everything, because it's only through those things, all that stuff, it's only through Mara that we can actually discover what's not Mara. It's only through suffering we can discover what's not suffering. And then that's when we start to really have confidence. This is the place. There's no other place than this, whether we're thinking that or not. And mostly we won't be thinking it, unless you think about it all the time, like I do. I think about it a lot, because it's really nice. It's a little bit weird. I just walk around and think a lot about what's unformed. And then I went into the post office today and saw somebody, and I don't know, just before I could think about anything, I went, "Ooh, ooh." And they said, "Are you an owl?" Anyway. It's a little difficult to express, but we can play. It was a little, didn't think about it this way, but it was just a little invitation into this unformed space. When I did that, it was like, I don't always just hoot at people. I don't think I've ever done that, but it was like, that was my little creative expression in that moment, you know. And I don't know if he felt that, but we had a kind of creative little interaction. It wasn't the usual kind of thing. Hopefully maybe there's a little space around the whole thing, like even just a little bit of creative space. And I can find just this little bit of creative space within ourselves, and also in our whole life and in our interactions. Suzuki Roshi called these letters from emptiness. Letters from emptiness. These like little messages from emptiness. Like these like weird little messages to our karmic mind that usually we're just all about. We're all about this karmic mind. We're all about each other's karmic minds. Karmic mind, karmic mind, karmic mind, karmic mind, karmic mind, karmic mind, yes, karmic mind, yes, this karmic mind, no, that karmic mind. That's kind of like the way of the world. How do we like just we're not all of that. We are all of that, but we're not all of that. That's not our place. That's not a suitable place. It's not a suitable ground to stand in. It's just endless tides. So how do we find this place? This dry land. We come to a retreat like this. A lot of people come to a retreat like this, or go to a monastery or on a pilgrimage. They really want to find dry land. They really want to find dry land. Because it definitely isn't here. Once we start waking up to that, it's definitely not this karmic activity. No, that's true. It's not this karmic activity. Karmic activity is karmic activity, and it is unstable. It is unstable. Yeah. Connected to unwisdom so often, connected to death, to birth and death, at the very least. So then we may go looking for a form, looking for another form, looking for another karmic activity, looking for a place, but the place that the Buddha was pointing to, the place I'm pointing to, is with and it's known, the recipe for doing this is the Four Noble Truths, to understand suffering, to stand under suffering. The Buddha's injunction that first there is suffering, it is to be understood, stand under it. That's a meditative stance. That's what we're practicing here, to actually stand under our suffering. You got suffering, stand under it. There's no other place than now to do that, and there's no better version of you to do that. And here is the place. Here the way unfolds. And all these four truths, they happen in one tumble, all together in a moment. They happen in all together. They're all just this falling open to the moment. Suffering is to be understood. Craving, that's the cause of, is to be let go of. That's in a moment, really just again, it's the same thing, falling open. Not trying to resist what is here on the deepest level. If there's resistance, don't resist that. It's just on the deepest level. It's an immediate practice that includes all the cravings, it's immediate. It has to be immediate. You're not trying to do anything. It's just not wiggling from. It's being still with what is here, just as it is. And then the third, cessation, is to be realized. Nibbana, nirvana, is to be realized. It's the same practice in one tumble in the moment, falling open. You discover when you do that, this groundless ground. There is a groundless ground. This is the place of freedom. This is the place. There's a place of freedom. There's a place you directly touch. You directly touch what's not suffering in the midst of this moment. So it all feeds into each other. When you're doing that, then that's could work in the other direction. It uproots. There's no craving. There's no craving to move from this place because you're finding exactly what you really want right here. And you understand suffering. And the fourth, the Eightfold Path, just that's, it really becomes who you are when you really practice this. to an intimate practice. It's kind of in a way, it's kind of an aesthetic appreciation or an orientation to, and a way of thinking that I might suggest for, and that I like, to remind myself to think about. Because it's how, I don't know, when somebody's struggling with the fire in the morning, it's not, you can think if you want that the sitting is when the fire gets going and then we sit together, but really the real sitting is like that moment that's happening. I kind of appreciate it in that way, and then I hope they appreciate you appreciate it in that way. Or when we're eating and there's like some, there's kind of a weird feeling when that's kind of why I like to eat all together like that. It's just kind of awkward. And I tell you, don't make a sound with your spoon. And that makes it even more awkward. And you get all kinds of weird thoughts, maybe like, I don't know, I should be really mindful. I wasn't so mindful, or you really just feel like these people could go away. I just really shove this food into my mouth in a really undignified way, or I don't know. It's probably not the happiest setup for eating, but I think it's happy. It makes me happy because of this opportunity to wake up through it. Same thing, not so much sleep, or sitting still a lot. Not so much exciting things coming in. So in that way, many of the things we're doing, you could say it goes against the world, the grain of the world. But the way you find the real joy, deep joy in all of this is to wake up with it. Wake up with it. Discover this deeper happiness. Happiness of freedom and peace.